Welcome to Software Without Borders, where we delve into the limitless potential of software and how it's transforming business globally. I'm your co-host, Jarrett Striner, and with me today is my co-host, CEO of Accelerance, Andy Hilliard. Today we're exploring a topic that's reshaping how business scale and thrive, the value of hyper-specialization in software. How can narrowing your focus to true experts reduce risk and foster a culture of accountability? To shed light on this critical issue, we have a fantastic guest with us, Jim Marascio, CEO of Equals 11. With his extensive experience in Salesforce consulting and post-implementation optimization, Jim is uniquely positioned to discuss the intersection of expertise, risk management, and business growth. Let's unlock these insights together. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Jim, you've been in the tech industry since 1992. Can you share a bit about your journey from starting as a junior software developer to becoming the CEO of Equals 11, and what key experiences have shaped your growth?
Sure. I think you just told everybody that I'm old to start with. But so back in 1992, I was wrapping up college as a software engineer, or junior software developer in Rhode Island. That led me down a path where pretty quickly I was managing software development teams and then building out teams. And really for the last 25 plus years, I've been building teams as either the primary responsibility of my role or a portion of it. I've been a CTO of a SaaS company, a CTO of a retail tech company, a CIO of a national retail brand. And in all of those cases, I had a software engineering component where I had to kind of be the business guy in between the business and the engineers. And as part of that, I've always had to build out teams. So high level, that's really what I've been doing my entire career.
Hey, Jim. So we've known each other since 2003, 2004, 20 years.
Yeah.
And we started our relationship because at the time I owned a nearshore software company based out of Costa Rica, and I'll let you describe your scenario at Muzak. But why don't you just walk us back to the beginning of our relationship and maybe sort of highlight the ways we've worked together?
Yeah, sure. So as Andy mentioned, I was at a company called Muzak, at the time the largest business music provider in the world. They've since been part of a couple roll-ups and are now Mood Media. At the time, I was managing a software engineering team and digitizing the company, converting them from a 75-year-old analog company to a digital company. So think about iTunes and iPods and everything else before that stuff existed, but just before. And so we were building out what at the time was the largest content management system for audio in the world, and building the first content delivery network. And CMS and CDN weren't terms even at that point in time, but we were kind of envisioning them and building out that technology. And I was at the forefront kind of ideating and saying, okay, how do we do this? What are the problems we're trying to solve? Let's start pulling together teams. Very quickly, it got outside of the scope of what we were capable of doing in-house, both with respect to expertise and capacity. And so I needed some help. And that's when I was introduced to Andy. So at the time, we brought in our first software engineering team in Costa Rica, and that just kind of evolved. And since then, I've worked with or managed teams in 25 plus countries around the world. I've worked with Andy at Accelerance a couple times in other roles and been able to have Accelerance help me there. And I've built out teams independent of Accelerance. So that was kind of the forefront of me saying, okay, there's a world of talent out there. How do we access it to solve the business problems we're trying to resolve?
So you mentioned there's a world of talent out there, but you also mentioned the fact that, like at Muzak, you were looking for specific skill sets. And we're going to be using this term a lot in this podcast called hyper-specialization, because yes, the world is full of software development talent. In fact, 85% of the world's developers reside outside of the United States, but it's really not enough or not effective enough to just access the global talent because it's difficult enough to work across borders and across time zones and across cultures in order to really make it work, in order to make that cost differential exponentially even more valuable, you also need to find specialized talent, aggregated specialized talent, right? And so, can you describe sort of your journey from the days of Muzak looking for specialized talent to even today's scenario of and what you're leading and how that ties into the criticality of hyper specialized talent?
Yeah, I think specialization's always been a thing. I just think we're much more aware of it now because as technology is evolving, the opportunity to become more specialized is occurring. So going back to 2003-04, when we first met, I was looking for people who understood media. Digital media at the time was a very new thing. It had only really been around for a few years. And so trying to get people that understood how to work with media in a digital format was a thing. So in that case, it was more about industry specialization and how the technology applies to that industry. I think as it's evolved through the years, in the last 20 years, it's really gotten into hyper-specialization around industry, but also hyper-specialization around technology. So if you look at general software engineering as an example, there was an open source movement. So early on, pretty much everybody was using Microsoft or one of a couple other technologies. And now what you'll see is organizations tend to fall into one or two paths. They're either a Microsoft shop or they're an open source shop. And so that in and of itself is a level of specialization. Within that, you start getting into different technologies and on both sides of the house. And that's a level of specialization. As far as what I do today with respect to Salesforce, I think it's, again, choosing certain ecosystems. So when maybe I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit with your questions, but when we decided to launch Equals 11 a few years ago, we started looking at where do we want to plug into this larger ecosystem of software engineering? And at the time, if this was 2015, I probably would have built a full stack dev shop. But the fact of the matter is there's tons and tons and tons of them out there now. And I said, in order for us to differentiate, I need to go down a certain path, and that's either industry or technology or really both. So we started looking at different ecosystems that we may plug into, and Salesforce happened to be one of those. I looked at Adobe Experience Manager, and we looked at HubSpot, and we looked at SAP and at Microsoft Dynamics and a bunch of others, and for a lot of reasons chose Salesforce. And I think what you're seeing in the industry as a whole is whether it is a specific technology or tech stack or a portion even of a tech stack, or it's an industry vertical, you're seeing more and more specialization.
So, at Accelerance, when we look to vet and certify these development partners around the world, essentially we want to imagine a scenario in which there's different facets of customer needs and preferences and experiences and need for hyper specialization around certain attributes. It could be, their vertical expertise. It could be a tech stack. It could be an application type. It could be a team size. And we imagine that the partner that we bring to bear is focused, like laser focused on all of these specific attributes, and they hire people that are attracted to those specific attributes. And then when you match them with the client's like, where did you find these guys? It's like they seem to be built. This organization that you're asking us to partner with seems to be built for all the things that matter to me. And I'm not subsidizing any of them. I'm not paying for them to learn on my dime, and they're not generalists. They really seem to be passionate about this combination of attributes. So can you describe to me sort of how you're replicating that at Equals 11?
Sure. So as an example, in the introduction, Jarrett said post-implementation optimization. So even in the Salesforce world, from the outside, it might look like, oh, you're very specialized, you're Salesforce. Well, the reality is Salesforce has multiple different products. They have a product that's specifically designed for healthcare. There's one specifically for manufacturing, specifically for nonprofits, for education, more general products, and marketing, e-commerce, customer service and support. So they, even within the Salesforce ecosystem, have a huge number of products, and many Salesforce partners are very focused there. In the introduction, Jared said post-implementation optimization. When we looked at how we wanted to serve the industry, we said, okay, if you're implementing Salesforce for the first time in an organization, it's very much a change management exercise. It's much more about the people than the technology. Now, there's a people and a change management exercise happening with every technology change. It's just part of the beast, if you will. But when you're introducing a major tech stack into an organization that wasn't previously using it, and I don't care if it's Salesforce or SAP or Microsoft Dynamics or whatever, it's all about how do we align the business process and train the people to use that. And it tends to affect an enormous portion of the business. So we said, we're going to leave that to the management consultants. And we're going to come in and try to be a little more tech focused and say, how do we work with existing Salesforce customers to help them optimize their current Salesforce environment? Now, that doesn't mean we don't introduce new Salesforce technologies. And we do sometimes we don't. But what it means is we're working with companies that already are bought into the Salesforce ecosystem, and they already have an appreciation and understanding of it, and they're seeing value in it. And we're trying to get more value out of that for them with what we do. So in the context of us, that's how we approach it. It's not right or wrong. There's all kinds of different angles to take this from, but that's ours.
Well, leading into hyper-specialization, I came from the old school of, I never believed the whole thing, but, jack of all trades, master of none. I started out with one, right? At the beginning, I ran networks, and I did that for 10 years. And I'm like, well, this is all I'm going to do. I think I want to do something more. And then I learned how to code in college. So when you're talking about the old thing, I learned to hand code HTML. But that's what I did after I left running networks, right? And then I just kind of picked up this skill set, but it became very specialized. I did that one particular thing to add to, not like, oh, I might be able to run Photoshop. No, I can actually do all that. But, as the years get combined and you move into that one arena, then you get into that specialization. Then the skill sets don't continue to grow because you're so focused. When do you see that step happening? When you have all these skill sets, all these little routes, and then at what point do you have to take that leap to know that you need yourself or your staff just to be focused on one particular, thing?
Yeah, good question. Really good question. I think one of a couple things happens. In our case, pretty much every Salesforce engineer started doing some other type of development. Now, if they're just a Salesforce admin, and I shouldn't say just, if they're a Salesforce admin, maybe they were trained to be a Salesforce admin. But when you start getting into the development side, generally speaking, they started as a software engineer with some other technology stack. And for one reason or another, they had an opportunity to present it to them to do Salesforce coding, and they went down the Apex route. Or it might have just been a necessity. And so for one reason or other, they start going down that Salesforce route. So I think when we're looking at how do we differentiate, we're saying, well, our people probably started as generalists of some sort and then became more specialized. So they have that foundational understanding of other things. I think if you're talking about you as a sales or as an engineer saying, when is the right time for me? I think it really varies widely. Some of it's going to be presented as an opportunity or a need. Hey, I need to learn this because it's going to keep my job here because my organization's evolving around me, and this is going to help me advance or help me stay. In other cases, it's more opportunistic where somebody's saying, hey, there's a big demand for this. I already have the foundational tool set and skills to learn this. It's going to be a relatively easy transition. Let me learn that and see if that's something that I can evolve over time. And what we generally see is once somebody starts doing Salesforce work, they start learning more and more and more about Salesforce. And they're generally specialists in one area, but they're kind of generalists in the Salesforce world.
Yeah, that was kind of my experience. I used Salesforce for about 5 years. And at the beginning, I was just a user. and I'm like, oh, I can do this. And then I'm like, well, how do I run a report, or how do I change this, or how do I do that without breaking what you built? And Salesforce most likely, I hope at this point, is a lot more advanced than when I was using it, which was 10 years or so ago. But was there a lot of pushback with people when they did have a full stack in front of them, and you're like, we're really going to bring this focus in to be more hyper specialized? Do you have some people that are like, I'm going to ride this train, and some are like, no, I want to keep my skill set open? Because sometimes it's very hard for people to give up some of the things that they have worked on over the years, or something that they feel more comfortable knowing that I have all of this and now I'm only going to do part of that.
Yeah, so we don't build a lot of new Salesforce engineers. Everybody that we bring on our team already has Salesforce certifications, at least one, and then we're working with that. Now, we may help them evolve, or we encourage every one of our members. In fact, we require all of our engineers to get another Salesforce certification every year. So we're not necessarily going down that path of creating new ones. That said, I think regardless of where you are in the software engineering world, you're specializing of some sort. You're either getting more expertise in an industry vertical because you're working in it and you just get more contextual understanding of how that works, whether it's legal or retail or manufacturing or whatever it might be. Or you're learning, to your point about your Salesforce experience, there's opportunities for you to learn more about that tech stack that you're working within and become more specialized or more expert. And I think in a lot of ways, when we talk about hyper specialization, it's really expertise that we're talking about. It's how do you become an expert in something? And so, like anything else in life, if you're a juggler and you learn to juggle 3 balls, sooner or later you may decide, hey, I want to learn how to do 4 balls or 5 balls or 17 balls or knives or torches or whatever it is you want to get hurt with. So I think it's the same type of thing. You either get to a point where you say, hey, I'm happy here and I'm plateauing, or I've done enough to meet my personal needs or interests, or I want to do more.
Jim, so hyper-specialization or expertise, whatever you want to call it, there's always this sort of honeymoon phase, or this excited moment between, let's say, you and the client in regards to alignment of needs and expertise. How do you then launch that and extend that to, build a relationship of continual value add over time? Because the definition of expertise and alignment only gets you to sort of square one, but then you need to start building out a relationship of continual value and defense of that relationship, so that the customer is bought in and committed to that relationship.
Yeah. I mean, what you're talking about is customer service. Yeah. So I don't care if you're a Salesforce engineering shop or you're a restaurant. It's how do you get your customer, your client? And in our world, we like to refer to them as clients. We didn't talk about the name equals 11, but it comes from the belief that 1 + 1 doesn't have to equal 2. 1 + 1 can equal 11. When 2 organizations or 2 individuals work together in something, they can achieve more collectively than independently. The whole is greater than some of its parts. And, all that type of thing. And so when we're looking at providing value, we start by saying, it's our goal for you to become a client and for us to become a partner. We don't want to be considered a vendor. The term customer tends to be more transactional. Vendor tends to be more transactional, whereas client and partner have a more of an ongoing relationship. And so I think part of it starts with the way we introduce ourselves and the fact that that's the expectation that we set. And if the client or the prospective client it doesn't buy into that, then we're probably seeing that and it's probably not a good fit. So I think that the same thing happens on an ongoing basis. Once you get in there and you're working with them, the goal is to provide value. And if you're providing value and their business is being successful, then there's going to be more opportunities presented to provide more value. But that's really our first goal is let's get in there, let's understand not necessarily just the problem they're asking us to fix, but let's understand the business. Where's the value to their business? Let's take a little bit of a consulting approach to this and say, how do we really help? So when our engineers are in there working on things, we're having conversations with them behind the scenes saying, okay, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? Where are there opportunities where we may be able to help? So because it's really important for us to understand the business. And then we're doing a quarterly business review with the client. Same type of thing. What are the problems they're trying to solve? What are the challenges they have? And very often what you'll find is the client will point out symptoms, not the real root cause of the problem. And so as we're in there with our consulting hat on, we're trying to help identify what that core issue is. And is it something we can help with? And if so, what are the steps for us to do that? Because we know, again, if we're providing value, they'll keep us around.
Jim, one of the key benefits of hyper-specialization is fostering a culture of accountability, right?
Yeah.
We want to make sure that these people who are very focused on what they're working on, they're accountable for the things they're doing because they're not doing 74 different types of things, right? They're specialized. So how does working with true experts in their field contribute to that? And what does it really what does it look like? What is the outcome going to be because you have an expert in that particular field working for you?
Sure. Accountability is one of my favorite terms. Andy knows that. So I think it starts by acknowledging that when you have good people, when you hire rock stars, they want to work with other rock stars. And they want to be held accountable and they want to hold others accountable. And frankly, they generally don't tolerate it very well when that isn't happening. So I think it starts with the people. Let's bring people in that want to be held accountable. Let's create a culture of accountability. And let's set the expectation to our client that we want you to hold us accountable, but in return for that, we're going to hold you accountable for your portions of it too. And if we can do that, what will end up happening is there'll be a high level of trust. So accountability absolutely 100% fosters trust. Because if you get to the point where you know that you can hold Jim Marascio accountable, you're going to trust Jim and give Jim a little more latitude to get stuff done. And likewise, the same if I'm working with you, Jared. So I think that's where it happens. It's not so much to me about hyper-specialization and experts in Salesforce as much as it is high quality individuals and high talent individuals that happen to be experts. And generally, you're not going to end up with a low talent, low quality person that's an expert probably. So I think some of that solves that problem in and of itself. But it's that creating a culture and an expectation of accountability.
Jim, I bet you get yourself, we all do, into customer-client relationships whereby the client pushes back on their commitment to accountability. Maybe
Sure.
They don't want to be accountable for various reasons. Maybe they don't buy into it. That's typically a yellow flag or red flag. What do you do in order to sort of establish this up front? And of course, how do you sort of work to maintain that, even though, customers may change or people may come in and out, and that requires sort of new sort of level setting in regards to how the relationship can optimally run. But whether it's changes or not, like how do you continue to foster that and establish that so that the relationship is as healthy as it can be?
Well, I think it does start with the upfront expectation. So in our sales process, we talk about 1 + 1 = 11 and being partners and being and not being a vendor and being a client. So we set that expectation right from the outset that this is a relationship. And part of a relationship is trust. Part of building trust is accountability. So, we're not that direct per se about it. We are a little bit direct about our name and what that means. And if you look at the core values on our website, the number one core value is partnership. So, I think it starts with that. Does everybody play by the rules? No. So I think that the catch is identifying those yellow flags and red flags early on and recognizing that, whether it's one of our team members shouldn't be a team member anymore, or it's one of our clients shouldn't be a client because we're not a good fit. That's okay. We still want to deliver and meet our expectations. But if it's not a good fit, we're not going to pursue, extending it or growing it or that type of thing just because it's not going to be mutually beneficial. And our goal here is to be a partner.
Do you have any stories on how that maybe played out in a customer relationship?
Sure. So we've got a client today that we've done some work with that early on, the expectations for us were much more transactional. And so we had to step back and talk with them about, hey, we can help beyond this, and here's why. And we want to be, again, a partner, not a vendor. We're looking to do this, and with the experience we're having right now is that we're not getting full insight to things. We're not being given the information to be able to make the most apologies for the background noise. Have you heard that? Yeah. Doorbell. So we had to set that, kind of reset the expectations with the client and say, here's where we are, here's what we're doing. And here's where we can provide the most value. And in doing that, it sort of shed some light on something that we knew was an issue. They probably weren't even acknowledging it at the time. And what it's done, it could have gone one of two ways. It could have gone the way where, hey, this isn't a good fit, and that's okay. Let's finish up what we're doing, and we'll back out gracefully. What it did instead was force the opportunity to have that difficult conversation and say, yeah, how do we improve this relationship? And the result is it improved the relationship. It's created more opportunities. It's extended the original opportunity, and we're still working well with them. But it was because we chose to, rather than be passive about it and just accept it, to confront it, diplomatically, politely, respectfully, but say, hey, here's what's happening, and here's why it's not working well for us.
I'm going to throw out a hypothesis. Isn't it don't you think it's sometimes good to almost force hard conversations because it gets beyond that transactional layer of you and the 100%. Client and bring up things that would normally be, maybe they're not blowing up or hair on fire, but it's something that you want to explore preemptively, because it's there on the horizon or it's bound to happen, but it gets you to a deeper level of relationship.
Sure, as long as you do it respectfully and politely and that type of thing. What my experience is that the best leaders out there respect you for confronting it. Yeah. Because the reality is 90+% of the world is going to keep their head down, ignore it, and pretend like nothing's happening. And the result is going to be that that problem is going to persist, and sooner or later that problem is going to be the problem that ends the collaboration. So by confronting it, it may be awkward, it may be difficult. Good people will respect that and will say, okay, this is the type of person I want to work with. Let's work through this.
Still talking about accountability, Jim, being a parent, I used to have a chart up for the kids, right? Did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do this? So we knew, like, okay, I didn't have to walk in the room, open the door. Did you make the bed? Did you pick up your toys? Did you do your homework? Did you brush your teeth? Yeah. We made it a game. So, of course, at work, what kind of systems have you used? Because I know we use EOS. And that way everyone can see, well, what are you working on? What is your big goal? At other companies, we use different types of systems for the accountability, right? If you keep it open, the accountability, that we can see what everybody's working on, we know we don't have to wait every week till you have a one-on-one with your boss. Well, what are you working on, right? Mm-hmm. I make a running sheet with my staff. So when we walk into the meeting, here's the top 3 things you did and you're working on. Here's the next 3 things. And then so the next meeting I walk in, how did those go for you? Do you need help? Where are you stuck? Right? It's not in the ecosystem of using something like an EOS, but it's very simplistic where when you have multiple people to talk to, these are the 3 big projects that they're working on. How do you maintain having staff, whether it's in-house, whether it's offshore or nearshore? How do you keep everybody accountable and on the same page?
Sure. Well, first off, we're an EOS shop too, so that makes it easy that way. But even when I've worked in organizations that aren't, you need some level of scorecard. You need what I find is it's all about managing expectations and measuring the incremental steps toward those. So whether it's project management and you say, okay, first we're going to agree upon what is the desired outcome of this, that's generally written in a statement of work or something if it's a contract. But let's all align on what that is. Then let's step back and say, okay, what are the incremental steps to get to there? What are the milestones we need to hit to do that? Have everybody agree upon that. Step back then and say, okay, who is going to be responsible for what? Let's make clear ownership, because you never want to have multiple people own something, because then nobody can be held accountable. You end up with finger pointing. So you want to assign ownership there, and then it becomes a communication exercise. Is okay. Let's agree upon how we're going to communicate, who's going to own this communication. When are we meeting about this or that? And then just follow those steps over and over and over. Because if you're having a weekly meeting and this is what the agenda is for the weekly meeting, or a monthly meeting, or at every sprint or every release or whatever it is, if everybody knows what's coming, it makes it very easily to hold them accountable. Go back to that accountability conversation and say, if people know what to expect and they know that they're empowered to hold other people accountable, but that everybody else is also empowered to hold them accountable, it starts to develop that high level of trust. People know the rules of the game, and away it goes. And EOS does that really well, if it's implemented well and being adhered to well, because you've got the weekly scorecard, and you've got the monthly or the quarterly rocks and everything that you're tracking on a weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual basis. So that's the way we kind of run our business. But with respect to projects, it's all about that other stuff that I was just talking about.
So can we disassemble and then reassemble sort of the areas of hyper-specialization that Equals 11 stands for when like as components and also as the aggregated whole? What are those components, and what is the, I guess, aggregation that makes Equal 11 so superior in that very specific scenario for a client?
So I make sure I understand the question right. You're asking me essentially, what is it that we do and why do we do it better? Is that fair?
And all the things that contribute to that make it so different and so unique and so much of a better value.
Yeah, so I think from the outset, we focus on A, Salesforce, and B, post-implementation optimization. So we know who we are, we communicate who we are to start with. So if you're not an existing Salesforce customer, you're probably not a good fit for us. From there, if you are an existing Salesforce customer, then it's always a matter of looking at, are you experiencing some pain or some challenge you're trying to go through, or is there some opportunity that you see to improve? And then let's talk about that and see how we might be able to help. From a how do we do it differently and how do we excel at it, going back to my expertise, from the first time we started working together 25 years ago, Andy, I've been building and managing teams both with and alongside accelerants and independent of that. So I've developed, and my business partner, Kenneth, has done the same thing for almost 20 years. We both have an expertise around identifying talent, qualifying talent, bringing talent in, and getting talent to work well together. So it's allowed us to A, build out a great team that can excel, B, have a really strong process to augment and evolve that team as need be. But C, what's really unique, and we actually signed up a partner recently that we're working with to help them deliver their services, who the primary reason they came to us is because we have strategic relationships that allow us not to have to carry the cost of a bench, which inflates our costs if they're not fully allocated, but gives us access to other companies' benches. So we're a Latin American focused company. Most of our engineers are based in Mexico, to Argentina, and Chile. We do have a couple in Europe that happen to be Latinos that are located in Europe, but we have a strategic relationship with a Salesforce staffing company in Poland. another one with one in Argentina, another one with one in Brazil, and another one with one in Chile. And so what that does is those companies, all they do is staff Salesforce talent. That's all they do. And so when we need to move quickly and I need somebody with a specific Salesforce technology expertise, I need somebody with Salesforce Nonprofit Success Pack, which is a very niche Salesforce product and has experience with healthcare nonprofits. If we don't have somebody on our team that we can, or somebody's on our team that can do that, I can immediately go to those other staffing firms and say, I need somebody in it. And in a matter of 2 days to a week, I've got people, and I don't have to go through a month or 2 month long hiring process. It affects our margins to some degree, but it gives us the agility to be able to move very quickly and be very precise about how we prescribe solutions to our clients. So I'm not trying to make somebody who might have experience in manufacturing work in education. Sure. I can go get people that have education background in the Salesforce context.
So offshore, cost efficiency, often time zone alignment, maybe proximity, if that even plays into it. Obviously, a larger talent pool that allows you to find even more hyper specialization around,
Exactly. So we're LATAM first, and that's really because we want time zone alignment. There's a big benefit, and clients respect that a lot. That said, we've got a bunch of people in Poland as well when we need to pull in experts on certain things. So we've got a talent pool of over 600 that I can bring to the table, but our team is only around 40. So it gives us the ability to stretch and flex and really punch way above our weight class without having to carry the cost of that. So you couple that with the fact that Salesforce engineers are just damn expensive. In the United States, if you're contracting a Salesforce engineer, you're going to pay $200+ an hour for a contractor. Us going offshore, we can cut that cost sub 150, very often sub 125. We don't sell based on our cost. That's not, we're trying to sell and be the right solution provider for them. But when it comes down to the numbers, we're always competitive. And if we're not competitive, then their expectations are unrealistic. And that's an easy thing to qualify them out. We had an opportunity brought to us about a month ago, and somebody came and said, hey, we want to pay $60 an hour. And I said, you can go to Pakistan and India and Bangladesh. Otherwise, and I can't help you there right now. Or you can not do anything. Those are your choices. And so it's easy for us to say no and qualify them out.
Yeah.
So Jim, taking all this as a whole, I know that you're running for city commissioner in North Carolina. How does hyper-specialization and accountability and all of those things, roll up into taking the next leap into politics?
Yeah, funny you bring that one up. So, I am running for county commissioner in Mecklenburg County and in North Carolina, which is where Charlotte is, where I'm located. I suspect that very few of the listeners and viewers of this will be able to vote for me, but if you do live in Southern Mecklenburg County, I'm your guy. I think they're really discrete, totally different things for me. I am leveraging my business experience and my experience of collaboration and my experience of holding people in organizations accountable as part of my platform and why I'm running. In fact, those are a big reason why I'm running. I think there's a lack of business expertise and business acumen and accountability right now in that space. So I don't know if it's necessarily hyper-specialization. It's certainly not a Salesforce thing, but it's certainly not a technology or software engineering thing. But there are principles to all of that apply to doing this well. And I'm a first-time candidate, so I'm still learning. But I'm definitely seeing a lot of overlap with what I do on a day-to-day basis and what needs to be done here in the campaign process.
Well, great. I think we're sort of at the end of Jared. Do you want to wrap up?
Well, Jim, it's a pleasure having you on the show. Your insights into hyper-specialization and its impact on reducing risk and enhancing value are incredibly valuable to us. So thank you for sharing your expertise with us. For our listeners, remember to subscribe to Software Without Borders and give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcasting platform. Stay tuned for more episodes where we continue to explore how software is transforming industries around the globe. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.